Greetings. I am Tom Earl. Welcome to the celebration. You could be anywhere. So the fact that you are here right now in this moment, it means the world to me. You are valued, you are appreciated, and you are loved just as you are. Final, not just episode, but final, it's like a double whammy. Final episode and final bonus episode with Miata. Miata, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Okay, let's just go right to the camera off. This is the 6th episode. They know what we look like out here.
Yep.
Okay, so I wrote down 4 things. So I'm going to kind of just go through from the last episode. I'm just going to kind of go through them. So we had talked about like different forms of journaling. I feel like prove my point that this format is journaling. And I say that because it has like there is no end results that I'm reaching for. And it has had like even the last episode where I'm gonna have to listen back to it the way I described journaling. But even now where I'm like, this is journaling. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize this is journaling. Like that reflecting back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Funny enough, I have been trying to not say some sort of like fill in the gap after I'm done talking. For example, saying something like, if that makes sense, which takes so much courage, but I just did it right there.
So my one I'm struggling with is right. So I have listened to a few recordings of me, and I was not aware how often I was punctuating with that word. So yes, just fitting what you're saying and being done takes practice.
My friend Adam and I may have brought this up before, always remind each other. And I think it was Wayne Dyer that turned Adam onto it, and then he turned me onto it, and then we just share it with each other. Let yourself be misunderstood. And that is scary. That's really scary. Why did I write this one down? I wrote down putting firm end time on the end of the day. It was about work.
It's about presence, I think.
Yes.
Connecting. Yes.
I know I was going to say about this. This is one thing that I've realized about business or having your own business or working or things like this, that there's lots of reasons why, but I think one of the reasons why too is because it is creation. Like every day you're creating something new that wasn't there from your mind, right? We have a vision of the day, we have a vision of what we want to get done, and every time we do, everybody uses this word manifestation. It's kind of like it was in your mind and you made it happen, and you made it happen quickly, right? You're like, today I want to write that email. You wrote it, you brought it to life, you had that vision and you brought it to life. And that can become an addiction to creation, to manifestation, to bringing our ideas to life. Like we can become addicted to that feeling of there it is. And then the inverse can feel a lack when we're not doing that. One of the things I remind myself of is we're never, ever, 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 ever going to get it done. You'll never get it done. And we're not supposed to, because life is infinite. How can you ever complete infinite? So that's one of the things I try to remind myself of is like, I got done what I got done today. And even if I didn't get anything done today, it'd be all good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I actually come a long way in that something I would almost never do anymore. And I'm not saying never, because I imagine there might be a situation I would, but pulling the 2 a.m., just going to finish something and finally going to sleep at 2 or even 3:30. I don't do that anymore. And it's something that I'm actually kind of shocked how long I did do that, thinking that that was necessary or advisable in any way, shape, or form. So I don't do that anymore. But still, what I think the next step of growth for me really is the firm ending. And I think a part of it could be just deciding at the start of the day, today my day will end at this time, and then holding to that. I think that I'm actually coming to this right here live with you, Tom. That rather than me saying Miata is stopping every day at 6:30, which doesn't seem sort of practical for my life just because of some of the time zone things, but really saying at the start of the day, I am stopping today at this time, and honoring that, because you're absolutely right. Like, we will never be done.
And I think for me, what's helpful to remind myself of is, and doing will never make me feel complete or happy. Even if I heard Eckhart Tolle say this. He's saying, even if all of the wildest imaginations of your ego were realized, everything that you've ever wanted to happen. So for me, best friends with Janelle Monáe, on tour with Beyonce, all these, I get a hike whenever I want. I get a jam all the time. Like, even if that was true, like, you are at your core more amazing than all of those things combined.
Yes.
And that's like, that one's tough, because it feels like if I wasn't doing, it would all fall apart. And then the opposite, my worst nightmares would come true.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Tom, I just want to reiterate again, then, this book that I'm reading that I mentioned at the end of our last episode, because that's also a part of the journey that I'm finding she's taking me on, is her sort of journey of realizing that piece, that it wasn't about sort of earning her worth. And I think that's something that we say in theory, but to truly know that is I think an important and really valuable process.
And it is the exact opposite of everything we've been subconsciously taught is how you create a worthy life in this culture, because we don't build monuments for people like that. We build monuments for people who do things, who innovate, and usually it's almost always linked with, and make a lot of money. And that's the big thing. It's killing our planet. Creating another $1 billion product is not what this world needs, but it feels like it does. It feels like that's kind of the message we're given, that the answer to the planet's going to be found in the next $1 billion invention. It's just that an invention will somehow finally benefit the earth and make money.
Yeah.
No, you're going to say something. Go ahead.
No, I really wasn't. That
Okay.
You said it well. Yeah.
Okay, I did want to. This is funny. When I was reading this book, I was like, oh, I need to email or text this to Miata. This might have been a year ago. And then I never did, because then I got to the middle of the book and there's kind of like a controversial part, but I'm going to say it now anyways. Have you heard of the book, Time Management for Mortals, 4,000 Weeks? Have you heard of this book?
No.
So 4,000 weeks is, if you live to 80, that's how many weeks you'd have. It is a amazing book, but it really examines how we have become, as a culture, so focused on time management around productivity and performance and accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really good. Now, the controversial part is that he does present research, thought research, not experiments, thought research by a scientist who is a Nazi. Now, he prefaces it in that he is Jewish, so he recognizes the danger of this, and I think tries to be like, if someone can do this, I can. But that did make me pause on recommending the book because I got a lot of value out of the book. I see the reason he did it when you read it, but out of context, a recommendation like that can take on a life of its own. But it was a life-changing book for me. And I actually felt myself get into that place of letting go of time while I was reading it, if that makes sense.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I recommend it for sure.
All right. I am actually, there we go. I've just saved it so that I don't forget.
Okay, then movies. Have you seen Tully
No,
from 2018?
I don't think so. Tell me what it's about. I cannot remember movies.
Here's how they explain it in one sentence on IMDb. A struggling mother of three forms an unexpected bond with the night nanny hired to help with her newborn baby.
The Night Nanny. No, I don't
Okay.
think I saw
You
it.
can Google it if you want while we're talking and look at the
Oh,
image. That might stir something.
let
But
me
you
see.
remember, if you saw it, you remember. I think that movie is so amazing. So I think in this conversation we're having now too, that it's like, and actually when I watched that, it didn't even have any children yet. So I should watch it again. But yeah, it's definitely amazing. I
All
recommend
right,
it.
cool. I'll add that to my list. Yeah, I've just called it up. I'm pretty sure I did not see this. Not because it's Charlize Theron. Nothing's ringing a bell. So I'm adding that to my list as well.
Boom. Well, what else? What else is on your mind? Thoughts, things you wanted to talk about, things you've
You
been thinking on.
It was interesting. There was something that jumped out at me from our last episode where you were talking about people in cars, particularly in LA being different. And you were saying how, you could think, oh, that's a horrible person, except for that, like some of the people you love drive like that. And definitely something that I have been feeling a lot in last, I don't know, a few months probably, is just that I am experiencing, it feels like a lot of people being pretty unkind is the way I'm going to say it. And in ways that, again, I don't think it's who they are, but very rude in emails, very rude in texts, like feeling okay, just being irritable. And I'm wondering if I am just, for whatever reason, being sensitive, or whether that is something that there's kind of a shift energetically where, I don't know, people are tired or discouraged. I'm wondering whether you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I was like, was almost certain you were going to bring something up to do with technology. We've already covered driving. So it was like, okay, if it's not transportation, because, airports, cars, I think that is a big trigger, transportation. And then the next one, if it wasn't politics, but even I think politics, it's a lot of because of technology. So when you're saying like email, text, social media, like I saw this one video and I was like, oh, people are going to be horrible in the comments. And they were. And I really don't think that the pros of the internet are outweighing the cons right now.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think that when you look at what's happening to our minds, and especially I think as a reflection back to us of what's happening inside of us to our planet, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
just let it all go. Take away the internet, take away our cars, take away electricity. Like I'd rather we survive as a species and that animals survive and our oceans survive than I keep getting the conveniences that technology give me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's not. It's going the other way. And it's always a trap. Like you think of smart cars or not smart cars, electric cars. Like it seems like a solution, but it's just another problem. You know,
Yeah.
they're still getting those minerals by creating wars and usually somewhere in Africa and destabilizing that region and then taking their minerals and selling them to me. And it makes sense why the mindset that has colonized the world because it's a mindset that will never be satisfied. It will never be satisfied. It will always need to control, will always need to denigrate and exploit, and is always searching for the next thing. So it makes sense why it's taken over the world. And it will continue to do it because it becomes the air you breathe. And it's now that we're all connected, there's there's no there's no pause. It's constantly socializing all of us. And it becomes the norm. It becomes what's expected. And it takes even more self-awareness to see it in yourself than other people because it's easy to see it in other people.
Yeah.
But I've had a number of experiences with technology, like when I was running my business, where something would happen that my whole business would come to a grinding halt, and I'd have 30 clients now screaming at me. So I'd be like, I'd have an email all ready to go to send to the customer service person, like, you idiots are blah, 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 blah. And then one time I was like, you know what? Let me not send this to this person. And then I was able to get on Zoom with the customer support team, and they're like, hang on, let's go get our product expert. And then they went and got the person that I was going to send the like, you're a piece of shit email to. And he was like, oh, hey there, Tom. We've been emailing. What can I help you with? And I was like, oh my God, I am so glad I didn't send that email.
Right.
And that's kind of like, when people are like, you wouldn't say this to somebody to their face.
Right.
But
Right.
that we I think we used to say the like, oh, but it's anonymous. I think but somehow technology seems to be exacerbating our ability to dehumanize each other. And
Mm.
and I really think that this like turning life into content, that any moment could be content and I could get viral from it. This like striving to turn life into content is so it's so dangerous. It's
Yeah.
so dangerous. So I
Yeah.
guess just a lot of short-term pessimism. I think that we probably will have to take this to the extreme before we are able to recognize this is what I was telling you before, where I was saying, well, I guess how I'm doing is suffering is spiritual. Like resisting this, I have found, or getting mad or hating people for being like this is it's certainly not the solution.
Right. Right. Yeah. I like how you call it short-term pessimism because I think I have been feeling I swing, but there are aspects of this world that I am in a space of extreme pessimism. And everything you said so resonates with me. And then when I say, okay, but what can we do? Right? What can we do? Um, and lately, I just really been disappointed because I feel like a simple thing we can do is be kind. Like, pause, just like you said, before sending the email, before. And, I have been told my whole life that I'm too sensitive, right? That's something I've been told since I was very small. And there is a part of me now as like a full grown adult that's like, yeah, I probably am too sensitive in in the world that we live in. But I also feel like, but really? Like, is it too much for us to all just try to be thoughtful? And I love how you said, it's easier to see in other people. So that is really the work I'm doing. Is the more upset I get, the more I'm like, all right, just look at you, keep looking at you, right? It's like keep seeing the ways that whatever is upsetting you is showing you what you need to work on more. And then there's also a part of me that's like, yeah, but I wouldn't go comment like that on social media. I wouldn't send a message like that to someone just because I was a little annoyed. You know what I'm saying, Tom? I don't know.
No, I do. I do. I mean, I literally had, I'm not even gonna go there, but yes, I had, I mean, it's one of the reasons I shut down my agency.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get it. I was totally burnt out on technology, and I got so deep into technology and marketing, and then was in rooms of people who were even better at this stuff than me. And I was like, oh, what has this become? And the thing that I really saw was the same tools that my supposed like enemies are using, my heroes use too. The only difference is what? That I believe in the that the means are justified because I
Right.
agree with their ends. And it's like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how am I or we different than them if we're using the same tools? The only difference is I'm right.
Right. Exactly. That's that. And that is where sometimes I just say, oh my gosh, I just need to pull the covers over my head because yes, right? That's where I end up really just back at looking at me and saying, okay, so I use the tools. I just happen to believe I'm using them for good.
And,
But
and it's
oh
tough.
yes.
It's really tough because this isn't like this can get too philosophical and sounding like there is no right or wrong. And there is. Like, people who want to hurt trans kids are wrong. People who
Yes.
want to take away people's ability to choose what they want to do with their bodies are wrong. People who want to not have us teach that, the impact of slavery and white supremacy are wrong. Like, there is right or wrong. It's not like, oh, there's a happy medium. Like, there isn't. So then, like, what do you do with that? And what's really hard for these people who, a lot of white people that I know very well, is so much of their lives, right? Like, the one of the big mottos that I grew up with is like live and let live. But globalization and the fact that we are all interconnected and that I can work from anywhere I want, and the fact that land is running out and that there is a system rigged against all of us, means that even white people's ability to live and let live is quickly evaporating. And instead of being like, yes, the system is rigged against us and black and brown people have known this for centuries, you're just waking up to this fact. Let's listen to them. Instead, it's like, actually, let's listen to this obscure niche podcast by another white guy who's got like half truths kind of twisted together into something that makes sense and doesn't really force me to change. Right. So it's like challenging. It's like, what do you do with this fact that this person is actually wrong? And I sound just like them, right? They're saying the same thing about me, but I actually am right. Like
Right.
that's what's challenging. Like, what do you do with that contradiction of I understand the irony and there are lines in the sand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Incredibly, I'm finding it very, very painful. Like I definitely feel like particularly since 2020, for me, leaving the United States, it was like lifting a burden off my chest for a little bit. And I know that sort of running isn't the answer per se. It is very, very difficult because you're absolutely right. Like the lines have to be drawn in the sand. And it's just gotten so ugly. And yes, all of the technology has made it so much stronger than it was when we didn't have all of these tools to kind of spew stuff as soon as we wanted to.
I think it's also that there's no middle ground on a lot of issues, like the vaccines. There's no middle ground.
Right.
Like
Right.
allowing trans kids and adults, of course, like to live their lives. There's no middle ground. Like
There's no middle ground.
teaching that
Absolutely.
slavery existed and has implications still today. There's no middle ground. And I think that the folks who benefit from it, so usually white folks, right? That and cis folks and but like they feel that pressure that the world that they have known and been able to maintain through politeness, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Trump was horrible, but Trump was is just another iteration of Reagan and Nixon and Thomas Jefferson and all these people. He's just another iteration. He's just a social media version, right? But it's that it's getting further and further because they realize that there is no compromise and we want to win. And what
Right.
becomes scary is like I was like, that senator who got elected for he was lying.
Oh,
I can't,
yeah.
right? And I'm like, what if the House was split and we were and the Democrats, I say we, right, won by one person and that person lied.
Right.
And if they didn't, and if we did a re-election, a Republican would get in and we'd lose the majority. And then
Right.
they'd pass all this horrible shit like abortion laws and all this stuff. What would I do?
Right.
And that's why I'm
Right.
like, oh, I don't know if I think the only reason I'm pissed is because it's them. And that I think is the part that becomes like the ends don't justify the means. They
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Like I definitely feel like the lines have to be the same, even when the consequences are devastating. But of course, you look at the Supreme Court justices, and of course, President Obama had how long left in his term? 8 months, and was unable to confirm a justice. And then, of course, absolutely changed the rules the next time, right? So it was like 2 weeks. No, we're ramming this person through. Um, so it all just gets very disheartening. It gets disheartening.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest consequences of Trump instead of Hillary
Yeah.
is three. When I was doing anti-bias training all the time, getting people to be kind on a one-on-one level was fairly easy, right? If you could bring even the most hardline Trumper into a room and they, felt heard and then they hurt somebody, that person would usually have tears and hear the person's story differently. And on an interpersonal level, it could change their interactions in terms of the biases that they have. But it is extremely difficult to get somebody to connect that interpersonal feeling to systemic. And it's why a lot of people don't feel like they're have bias, because they're like, if a insert the blank person, I would be so nice to them. Like I would be kind. I'd be polite. But then I'd use my systemic power to empower other people that would disempower that person. And that's the hardest part for people to understand, that it's bigger than you and your interpersonal interactions, that you are part of a nameless collective in many parts of yourself that exert power. And that's the hardest part to get people to understand. And I think because a lot of it is the kind of stuff you actually have to work out in things like therapy and worthiness and things like that. So that's the tough one to get people to see, like with social media, that yes, you're just one comment of meanness, and what does it matter? But that you're a part of a systemic wave of meanness that is changing the norms and kind of creating this it's okay thing.
Right. Right. And yeah, at the core, I do think that when I kind of bring it back into a place like for myself, when I bring this conversation back into a place where I can kind of wrap my head around what's next for me, I think that I am saddened by what I'm going to call meanness that I think is just coming from a very unhappy place. So just again, smaller, much smaller than what we've just been talking about, which is like all of these enormous issues where there is a right and there is a wrong. But I'm also just talking about the place we've gotten to where I feel like people are fundamentally unhappy, and it's causing them to just shout, and that's not making them happier. And the lashing out then makes whoever they've lashed out against unhappy, right? And that's a cycle that I think we could do more about, even in this world, with access to therapy and support and practices, access to practices, meditation and journaling, and having that be a part of school systems so that young people actually have tools to manage their emotions. It's something I've been thinking about, just because it feels like I'm seeing a lot of little nastiness, if that makes sense. You know, the big is definitely out there in a big way, but also like the little meanness.
Yeah, I agree. I hear that. I mean, there's lots of documentation that this people are lonely, not just unhappy, but lonely. And it does feel like, it's like I was saying, even I feel pessimistic. Like it doesn't feel like it's gonna get better. Yeah, I hear you. Well, this felt, what did this feel like? I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this conversation.
I
Well, we're
am
getting
too.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. That's the only downside to not seeing each other, is we're both not quite sure when the other person in the moments of silence is gonna say something.
Yep, but that's okay. That's all right. You know, I for years, Tom, the first I don't know. Abundance Bound is now 18 years old, but I think like the first 3 years, maybe, I taught all of my classes via teleseminar. I mean, the occasional kind of live in a hotel kind of thing, but teleseminar. And I think about it now, like I would have 12 people in a class all on the phone. And We did. Like, I always felt like the first class, people would be talking over each other. But then by class 8, it was sort of like we had found our rhythm in a way. So it's funny because now everybody sees everybody. But I think to myself, it worked for a long time. It worked.
I love that. Okay, I think I have one more thing on my heart to share that then we can go into wrap up. Do you have anything on your heart you wanted to share before we go into wrap up?
No, that's everything for me.
I think it's helpful to keep in mind that the job of the social media platform you're on is to keep you on the platform. And you'd think that mean that they'd show you things that you want to see, but most people's what's going to keep you there is more linked to negative emotions. So, for example, what you're talking about, Miata, most likely when the companies can tell that you're about to get off, they're going to show you something that demonstrates meanness. And then it can exacerbate that feeling. And then maybe you'll look in the comments and see, I knew it. And then it, boom, they got you on for another 5 seconds.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind, that we often scroll through social media from a subconscious place. Like, it's usually where we go to relax, and that it's a danger. These are dangerous technologies to trust with your relaxed mind. They're very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to believe how sophisticated the manipulation is. It really is. And none of us are stronger than it. None of us are stronger than it.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not. That's why I deleted my app, because I had a couple times where I'd be scrolling through and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. And then I started to get, every once in a while, stories of kids dying. Like, it wouldn't be of a kid dying, but it'd be somebody talking about their kid dying. And then it would just mess up my whole day. And then I was like, oh, that's on purpose.
Right.
Because I watch a lot of, like, and I send to Adora, like, kid joy. So they're like, okay, if I said you kid trauma, that'll probably throw you for a spin.
Right. Right. Right.
So let me be an example. I think I practice all the things that you hear out there for managing your mind. And I think I'm an extremely disciplined person, and I am not stronger than the algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you 100%. I know I'm not stronger than the algorithm. I genuinely am grateful that I was born when I was born, and really didn't have this stuff until later in my life, because I see the power and I'm like, and I don't know. I mean, I don't even really know, but I feel like I was certainly in my 30s. I feel like before I was on social media at all, I think. And I'm grateful I had my kids when I had my kids, because I feel like they are definitely in it. But now I look at the small ones, and when parents, and this isn't me blaming people, but when parents themselves don't know, and then, it just really is terrifying to think about what this is doing to the 4-year-old brain when I see them at coffee shops just swiping. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I was looking at somebody's tablet that I care for, and I went on their YouTube, and then I looked at their history, and I was like, do you know how to look at this? And they're like, no. I'm like, all of this stuff is geared towards 12-year-olds. And their person was 5. I was like, they're watching 12-year-old content. And they're like, I didn't even know how to do that. And it's like, so like what you're saying, like, as soon as they knew, but yeah, I'm with you. It's hard to know if you don't know.
If you don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I feel like if we could do another 3 or 4 just based upon this little part we're ending on. So why don't we go ahead
Right.
and it's like when you're in the parking lot and then you get in your car and then you kind of like drive over and you're like, one more thing. And now we're both talking to each other from our cars. It's like, okay,
Yes,
I'll call you on the way home. And then, it's like, so we'll save it for next year.
exactly. Save it for next year. And I keep thinking Adora will only listen if it's 30 minutes,
There
Tom.
you
So
go. Oh. All right. Why don't you gloriously self promote so the good folks out there can connect with you?
you can find me at abundancebound.com. And yes, speaking of social media, on Instagram at Abundance Bound. And just having conversations about how to exist powerfully as a non-traditional earner. That's something that I am super passionate about, and trying to be support in that little corner of the world.
Miata makes a good point. All of the internet and social media and podcasts out there are bad for you, except for ours. Thank you for making that point, Miata. Such a good point. I totally agree. I love Abundance Bound, y'all. I 100% do. It changed my life. You've heard me say this 6 times in a row. Wednesday evenings. Well, not evenings. Like I get a little extra time on Wednesdays to work, and I try to make it a habit of doing my Abundance Bound, know your numbers type things during that time. And I have to say, for business owners, oh God, we can get so stuck into the like, what's $15 in terms of subscriptions? And
Yeah. Oh, yes.
especially when you're scaling. And
Yep.
I myself, I always notice like if you take away 2 zeros from what you're normally making. So if like, you're bringing in 30,000, what's $100? If you're bringing in 10,000, what's $50? If you're bringing in, it's always like, I mean, what's that? It's going to help me make this. And one time I was like, you know what? I'm going to take out all duplicate and subscriptions that I was like, I'll use this, but I barely do. And I was able to, in over the course of 3 months, save $1,500 a month in my business. And that's
Wow. Wow.
$1,500 I don't have to make. It's just money back in my pocket. So
Yep.
I learned that kind of stuff from Abundance Bound.
That's pretty incredible. Like this is what I do, and it's what I've done for 18 years, but still, my time is Friday afternoons, yours is Wednesdays. And I just did a significant clear out of subscriptions, and also looking to see the ones that we absolutely need. I did a switch to annual. They were offering a real discount for doing that. My cut definitely wasn't anywhere close to $1,500 a month, but it was certainly a solid 300, and I was pretty thrilled about that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if mine is a brag here.
No. 1,500 is exciting. Are you kidding?
I mean, it's not exciting because I had been paying for that for months and months and months and months. So, I mean, it's exciting now that I didn't do it, but I shouldn't have gotten there in the first place. So yes, I got you. Okay, my invitation. So we do have a journaling community. You do not have to journal. It's so hard to talk about all of this because you don't have to know how to journal. We get together. One of the members described it as that it's a community of belonging and really connecting with what it feels like to reflect through a process oriented creative process. Let me see if I can use the word process one more time. So you can process things. So come join us. You get a monthly journal, a private podcast, and we create together once a month. TomEarl.me/DCM invite. All right, Miata, your final invitation of this series. What's it going to be? What do you invite people to do, to think about, to evolve into? What's your invitation?
I am going to invite everyone to pause in all of our communications and consider how that communication is going to make the person receiving it feel. And if you're certain that it is going to, or even have the slightest suspicion that it is going to make them feel bad, ask yourself whether it really needs to be sent.
Yes. All right. I invite you to see what you can learn from nature over the course of sometime between now and the end of the year. And I think that takes an extended period of time. So if you can find a patch of 2 hours to be in nature and to observe and to go in there with the intention of, what can you teach me? Because I have learned some serious life lessons this year from nature. It's been glorious. Just the other day, I was walking with Jayama. I was like, "Oh, we got to stop here. I always say hi to this tree." And she was like, "What? This, say hi to a tree?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's my friend." So she's like, "Hey, friend." So
Oh,
make friends with something out there. All right, Miata, this was amazing. This was wonderful. This was everything I'd hoped my podcast would be this year. So thank you.
this was a gift. Thank you.
And you all, thank you for listening, especially past the 30-minute mark. We're at 46 minutes. Look at you giving us another 16 minutes of your life. Thank you. We appreciate you. And as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.